Hey there. Welcome to episode 115 of the More Than Anxiety podcast. I have a bit of a different episode for you today. So, when I was naming my podcast, I chose More Than Anxiety for two reasons. One is because even though it sounds maybe a little bit cliche at this point, you are really more than anxiety, more than the feeling in your body. But the second reason is because I like to talk about a lot of different things. So, this week in this episode, you are going to meet Ryan Hernandez. Ryan was the member of an end times cult, and he dealt, understandably, after he left, with a lot of anxiety. Part of his healing and how he moves forward is sharing his story with other people, just so that he can kind of move it into the past tense and move it through and to let other people know about what his life was like. I wanted you to hear his story. I wanted to hear his story, and it was totally fascinating. So, of course, I said yes. One, because the story is amazing, and two, because he gets to heal by sharing his story on this podcast. And that means a lot to me. And I hope it was truly healing for him as well. So, this episode was an amazing one for me to be able to record and just listen to Ryan. I'm so grateful that he shared his story with us. So, really enjoy this episode.
Well, something that I have opened myself to is allowing my boundaries to be crossed a little
Mm,
bit
mhm.
because when you're in a cult, everything is confined, everything is small. And I wasn't born in a cult. I was born
Right.
and raised in LA and very open minded. And then
Mhm.
to kind of, I guess, uh, instead of evolve to go backwards. And now I'm in a place where I used to be that guy who was outgoing and just full of fun, full of life, not really that anxious, but I want to be that guy. So in order for me to get or reclaim who I authentically am,
Mhm.
there are some boundaries that the cult mentality placed, and I know it's going to hurt to cross those boundaries or to have people kind of ask questions that may seem to be, oh, I don't want to ask that, but I want people to ask that because
Mhm.
by them asking, I feel it is painful for a second at times, not as
Mhm.
much anymore. But now I'm in a place where yes, it did hurt, but now I can talk about it. I can go
Mhm.
there, and because of people asking questions, in a in a safe environment like this, I'm allowing myself to explore that pain and
Yeah.
to move forward. And that's the best part of it. That's the best part is that I'm not going
Yes.
to allow this anxiety or this pain or this trauma to control my life, but I'm approaching it in a healthy way, maybe in little pieces, but it
Mhm.
helps to express and get it out of the system.
Yeah, and it's like you're doing the work in this in your own podcast and being able to help other people. So I love it that you said that I wasn't born in a cult. Obviously some people are, but you were not. So what was your life like before you were like what was your life like?
Oh, I grew
Born
up
in
in
LA. Yeah.
well, I grew up in the suburbs,
Mhm.
closer to Long Beach. It's called
Okay.
Bellflower. So I'm
Okay.
from Bellflower. Went to good schools, and
Yeah.
my vision was actually the family vision was I would go to USC, University of Southern California. I
Uh-huh.
had goals. I wanted places to go,
Yeah.
things to do. But then at the young age, because I always had that desire of doing something good in life, whether
Mhm.
it was at school, at work, or maybe with church related events.
Mhm.
But sadly, I kind of got influenced by this group, and it was an end times cult. Initially, it was not an end times cult, it was just a group uh, claiming to be very Christian,
Mhm.
and I fell into it, and little by little, things started things started spiraling down. But what cults do is
Yeah.
they don't tell you everything on the get go.
Right.
They win you over. It's like a seduction. They seduce you, they
Yeah.
love you, they do all this love bombing, but then little by little, you start you start removing pieces of yourself. So for me, the way
Ooh.
I say it is removing pieces of my identity through sleep
Mhm.
deprivation, through sometimes sadly beatings, public
Oh,
humiliations, so things like that. But because you're in a cult, you're in an environment, it's hard to leave because then you're going to be painted as the villain.
oh,
So
okay.
so that's why I stayed for so long, because if I'm going to leave, the threat was God won't bless your family or God will curse your
Oh,
family. So the anxiety of
okay.
I'm anxious, I'm scared being here, but it's going to be worse if I leave because then I'm going to be cursed and my family's going to be cursed.
Yeah.
So that that's a bit about my story. But before that, I was ready to go to school, ready to get an education. I really
Mhm.
liked I really like meeting people. I love traveling
Yeah.
and I guess that's why I'm doing the podcast now. I think I'm regaining that old part of myself. But yeah, that's who I was. I was a teenager. I was just a jolly kid. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So were you a teenager then when you kind of started into that cult, like
Uh,
into that assimilation, or was it more like you were an adult and out of it? Because I know you said you wanted to go to USC. So there was like
yes,
it was high school or
that was my life plan from elementary. It's like,
yeah,
go finish my high school, go to Cerritos College and then the community college, then go to USC. It was
yeah,
all planned out.
right.
Um, but I joined at the end of sophomore year
In high school.
in high school, yes.
Wow. Okay.
And what I was promised or what my family was promised, because they were like, what the hell are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
But this group, like the leaders, or I guess one of the leaders, not all of them, but one of the leaders talked to the family like, hey, like he's gonna do some formation because it's the way it's presented is like a religious group,
Mhm.
like a think of like monks. It's like, hey, like
Okay.
you're gonna go to
Okay.
a monastery. He's gonna have time to pray, do his prayers, do his meditation, but we'll also supply a homeschooling from the East Coast, and
Okay.
okay, so he can still do his prayers, pray with us, and he can also find time for studies. That did happen,
Okay.
but many of the studies that I was doing were censored. Like they wouldn't allow me
Oh,
to, for example, like I had to do something on Shakespeare. And this is high school stuff. And
right.
I couldn't read Shakespeare. And I said, well, why can't I read it? Oh, because it's evil. Like, okay. So after like a month in during doing this homeschooling, it was discontinued. So next thing I know, I'm being sent to the Philippines, and that's a whole new chapter in my book. But the thing is that they were fraudulent, presenting to my parents that yes, we're going to take care of your child. He's still a minor, but we're going to take
Hmm.
care of him. We're going to give him an education. But instead of getting me an education, it became hardcore indoctrination. And
Okay.
maybe you can say brainwashing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like indoctrination, brainwashing. Yeah, it's kind of the same, right? Hmm. So did you get to see your family when you were in the cults, or was it something where you were cut off?
Well, I was because everyone has a different experience. I mean,
Okay.
what I experienced, if you talk to another member in the same cult,
Hmm.
their story will be radically different.
Okay. Wow. I didn't know that. I figured everybody, it was like a regiment, not so much.
No, well, I was getting a little bit jealous actually because I was still it's my first year and they allowed us to go home one time. That was for Christmas, my first
Mhm.
year. Okay, but just like a 5 minute kind of thing, real quick.
Oh,
Um, but then over the years, what I noticed was that a lot of the other members who were from California, because this is actually a Philippine based community.
okay.
So it's like there are a bunch of Filipinos, awesome Filipino community,
Hmm.
but I felt like I was being marginalized because I felt like all these other brothers or sisters are allowed to go back to LA. I was recruited home in LA and then I was sent to Delaware where they had what they call the formation house. So
Okay.
we're in Delaware living on the farms, totally different from growing up in the suburbs of Los Angeles.
Right.
I see the cows and the horses, totally different. But I'm noticing that a lot of other of the members, recruits who are from SoCal, are allowed to go home, and I wasn't. And
Mm.
it for me to see, for example, my brother, one of my brothers, it took me about 7 or 8 years before I was allowed to see him. But behind all of that was, oh, you can't go. I mean, just a lot of preventing me to go, but I would see others going. And then after leaving, because when you're in there, you don't have critical thinking. At least
Okay. Okay.
I didn't.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
upon leaving, I was thinking, was it because my family wasn't as maybe generous in their donations? Was that a punishment? Could that have been? Because they're not the I'm not from the richest family. I mean, but they would give what they could, maybe $100 here, $200 there to help support
Wow.
my needs because I
So your
am
family was paying this cult then while you were there because they were being told you were being educated and in more of like almost like I guess I would call it like a parochial school or like a church school.
no, just like because well, the education was one thing, and
Hmm.
then they dropped it, and then I got sent to the Philippines. So in the Philippines, it was just it's hard to really explain. It was
Okay.
just totally different. It was like Squid Games almost.
Okay.
I,
Wow.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Wow. Okay.
So like no
Squid Game.
contact, like no
Yeah.
phones, so like if we are allowed to make a phone call, it has to be monitored. You have to be with somebody. um but yeah, so my parents were sending money not for educational purposes, but hey, like they're in the Philippines, my son, or not just my parents, but the parents of several other members
Hmm. Hmm.
sending money because the leaders who stayed here in the US would go around to different areas in the country where they would talk to the parents and other supporters who aren't involved in the cult.
Right.
They're not in it, but they're outside like as supporters. They don't know what's going on inside. So from my understanding and speaking to my parents, the leaders would come to, let's say, LA, show pictures of us being poor in the Philippines, living in half constructed buildings, and be like, hey, we need money. We need money to finish this construction project. And I remember my parents asking me, so whatever happened to that construction project?
Hmm.
And I said, well, that picture that you're talking about was like 8, 9 years ago. Before I left the Philippines a few months ago, it still isn't completed. So it's like, where did that money go?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that
So yeah. I'm just trying. So when you say brothers and sisters, I'm assuming that you mean the others that were in the cult. Is that correct? Or
yeah,
actually your biological brothers and sisters?
no, I mean like I mean because it's a community, it's like a
Right.
religious, and then like if you reach that level, then maybe you can become priest or father. But that was very
Okay. Okay.
that even that the way they did it was shady as well. So,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
the rest, yeah, just brothers and sisters, but not my biological brothers and sisters.
Right. And that's why I thought, okay, surely your brother, your biological brother, was not in the cult with you. So when you said it had been separate.
He
Oh, he
was,
was.
but
Okay.
he joined earlier. This is another story, totally different.
Oh, wow.
But
I'm just like bringing this everywhere.
so that's
Yeah,
fine.
no, tell your story. This is fit. This is
So after I left the
amazing.
cult, I had no idea what to do with my life because you're told that if you leave, you're going to be cursed, that God's going to curse you. So it's like I didn't want to step out of out of the compounds, but I guess I just said the hell with it. I'm going to get out. And my first thing was to go to Australia where my brother lives.
Okay.
Now, I love my brother. We have a good communication, and I was there with him for 3 months, having fun in
Hmm.
Australia. But we also got to connect because he
Yeah.
joined several years before I did. And
Okay.
when I joined, it was like a tag team. Like I joined and then he bounced.
Hmm.
So when I was sharing my experiences, he was telling me that his was much more different
Mm.
because he joined when he was maybe 22 or 23, and he was more mature than I was. He had more,
Hmm.
so his experience from what he's related to me was, well, he's a good-looking guy.
Hmm.
He's a good speaker. So he said he had wanted to leave several times. Every time he had wanted to leave, it was, oh no, 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 we'll pay for your ticket to go to Europe so you can do some trips. So and like what not everything was bad. Some was like catechetical, meaning you're teaching just like the bedrock, the foundation of the faith, like the ABCs to
Okay.
people. So
Sure.
nothing wrong with that. And we grew up going to Catholic school,
Yeah.
a legit school in LA. So my brother was telling me, look, I know my faith, I know the educational stuff. Sure, I'm getting a free ride to go to Europe. I'm getting a free ride to go to Ireland or Italy for a few months.
Yeah.
I'm getting a free ride to go to Australia. He's like, I took it. I took it as a learning experience, but I knew that from his words, I knew that they were just trying to win me so that I wouldn't leave. But so his experience was different, where he was out
Hmm.
more, and me, I was sheltered because I was young. I think I was young, immature, and I believed everything that they said. Where I think my brother was more of a threat, and they kind of wanted to be careful around him.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you said that you really, when you were in the cult, that you didn't have maybe that rationality or those rational thinking skills or critical thinking skills where you thought, wait a minute, something's not lining up here. Whereas it sounds like maybe he had a little bit more of that. Oh, okay. Well, I know this isn't all, I mean, like some of this is bogus, but I'm getting a free trip to Europe. Like
Yeah.
it sounds like he was playing the game a little bit more that maybe you just were younger and didn't have that. Maybe your brain wasn't ready to do that yet.
Well, like in my first month or maybe second month, I did want to leave,
Hmm.
because of the humiliation. I was thinking this isn't Christian,
Mm.
but they made me feel one of. I mean, first I think that they noticed that I was having these like second thoughts because I was, like I said before I joined, I was outgoing, talking to people. That's how I was when I got in. When I started, I was outgoing, talking to everybody, and then I started getting all these humiliations, like they're putting you down, and
Mm.
so I was no longer the happy go lucky guy. And I think one of them noticed and started again that love bombing, kind of like
Yeah.
soothing, and then, oh no, we're not hating you, we're just testing you. God, what is it, like he refines gold in the fire or something like that. So it's like, okay, I made the decision at that point. Okay, anytime I feel like I need to leave this place, I'm not going to entertain it at all, because if
Oh.
a thought comes, I'm just going to dismiss it because this is what God wants of me. And this is where it's like I feel like Adam at the Garden of Eden. It's like I took the apple. It's like I took it. It's like, all right,
Okay.
I took the bite. Like this is it. No turning back.
Yeah, I'm
This is
here.
my life.
Okay. As a Christian, this is so frustrating for me that I mean, I think we hear it all the time that like people manipulate what, like, I think what I would call it, like the foundation of what Christianity is. When for me, it's love, and I'm like that. What someone would take that and twist it just enough to make it be terrifying. I mean, I know that we see this on the time, like religious trauma.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, I think this is just like a really extreme example of serious religious trauma. So when you said you kind of lost yourself in all of this, like you used to be this fun-loving guy and you were like outgoing and doing all of these fun things, but they put these ideas in your head that if you did that, you were going to hell or you were going to be cursed. At what point were, I mean, that to me sounds like something that, as somebody who I can remember when I was little being like, wait a second, some of this stuff is really freaking scary.
Mhm.
Like some of the things you read in the Bible or any of that, like, I mean, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or anything else, some of that stuff is like, oh my gosh, that's like really terrifying. Why would I want to do that? And it does have this way of keeping you really in line, I guess,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
like in this like forward motion where there's like walls all around you. So at one point, like, did you notice that you're like, wait a second, something's not right? Like, when did that happen for you?
I don't know because I think I notice things, and well, it's like you just dismiss it because the reasoning was they're doing this for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And if you, and the way that we were trained or programmed was, if you obey, you're gonna be like, they'll have like little catchy phrases. If you obey, you be okay. Or
Oh,
so it's like,
yikes.
okay, so if I obey, I don't, but then it removes the process of critical thinking. And if there is critical thinking, there will be punishments.
Mhm.
Solitary confinement was something that I had for quite a while, and it wasn't always solitary. It's like I'm in the room, but I'm not allowed to talk to anybody, and they're not allowed to talk to me. So it's they would say, "Oh, it's not solitary confinement. You're just on silence." But it's like, no, it's solitary confinement because I wouldn't be allowed to leave. for example, like for 9 months, I had that I would be in the chapel for 9 months in solitary, but for me to leave the chapel, I would have to ring a bell so someone can come and like let me out kind of thing. Or
Yeah.
like I wouldn't eat with the community. So these things were like when you question, when you see things are wrong and you say something, these are the punishments. So it's
Hmm.
like I don't want to see. I mean, there are things that are going wrong, but I don't want to see it because
Hmm.
this is my experience having solitary confinement or being humiliated. Well, maybe it's better to just keep quiet for a minute
Hmm.
until I just kind of. I think it took some time for me to break through it, and kind of I like to say I kind of broke bad. I mean, I didn't break bad, but in the
Hmm.
eyes of the cult, you're the black sheep.
Hmm. Hmm. And so at some point you felt either empowered or capable or just over it, maybe. I mean, something got you to take that step to leave. And so
No,
it was just a, do you remember the moment when you were like, okay, I'm out?
no, it wasn't like that. It was just a
It
flood.
wasn't like that.
It
Okay.
was a flood of different experiences, which
Yeah.
took years. Actually, when I was in the Philippines, got sent back to Delaware, and my grandma died. This is during my
Mhm.
time in solitary confinement. Kind of like I'm allowed to be there. I'm not allowed. I mean, it was just they. Can I cuss on this, or is this a
Yeah, you can cuss.
okay? Okay,
Yeah.
they fuck with your mind
Yeah.
and when with your emotions. And anyways, so my grandmother died, and the crazy thing about the sequence of events was I'm in solitary confinement, and then they said, "Hey, Ryan, we need you to go to Nebraska out of the blue. We need you to go to Nebraska. We need a Spanish speaker now. Here's your plane ticket. Go." Okay, so next thing I know, I'm in Nebraska, and I'm kind of having my fake smile, but I'm full of anxiety
Yeah.
because it's like, oh my gosh, what the hell am I doing? And I know, like, are they testing me? Is this like,
Oh my gosh.
am I being tested? If I do good, will I be let free? I don't know. But like the scary thing was that this was at the time of my birthday, and in this group
Okay.
celebrating your birthday, and I think it's also Jehovah Witnesses. They
Hmm.
do this where it's like celebrating your birthday is forbidden.
Yeah.
Well, in the group that I was in, it's something, it's a sign of selfishness that you love yourself more than God. So, anyways, I'm there in Nebraska and someone finds out it's my birthday. They give me a cake. I'm happy.
Yeah.
But I'm all right. Like this is a life, a
Uh-huh.
cake. But then I get a phone call like, "Hey, your grandma died." So now I'm thinking, "Oh no, this might be because I'm
Oh my
celebrating
gosh.
my birthday."
Yeah.
So I get sent back to Delaware. It was just a 3 day trip. So I go back to Delaware, and my family is calling me, "Please, we want you to come to the funeral." And so I talked to my superior there, and he says, "Ryan, you know what? I'll make the arrangements. I'll call your family. Just go back to the chapel, my solitary confinement room. Just go back there, and I'll talk to you in the morning."
Hmm.
So I talked to him in the morning, and he tells me, "Well, I spoke with your family, and they said it's better that you stay here in Delaware and pray for them." And I was like, "Are you serious? I just spoke to them yesterday, and they said that
Hmm.
they wanted me to come to the funeral. I want to come." And he goes, "Yeah, that's what they said." And I said, "How can that be?" And I said, "It's unfair that for," and I hadn't seen my family in about 8 years at this
Oh my
point.
gosh. Okay.
Like, how come other people can go home and see their families, but I can't? And he just says, "Well, just obey." Okay. 3 months later, my brother, the one who was in Australia, he comes
Hmm.
by to visit. He's passing by, and he asked me, "Why didn't you come to the funeral?" When we're sipping coffee, and I told him, "Well, because according to the superior, you and the family didn't want me there." And he told me, "No, that's not the truth." And I asked him, what is the truth?" And he told me, "Well, your superior called saying that you didn't want to go." So the family was thinking that I was rejecting them, and I was thinking that my family was rejecting me. So I think that that event started,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't blow open the doors for me to leave, but it kind of hurt the armor that I had enough to allow myself to realize that something's going on. I think that's when I started realizing something is going on. But I didn't want myself to go there mentally.
Yeah, and really using that, I think it's so interesting that you said that almost like they used that feeling of anxiety as a weapon. Like they weaponized your brain against you, basically. I mean, they created anxiousness that if you do this, then you will be cursed, you will go to hell, you will have whatever happens. But you really that manipulation of you saying, "Oh my gosh, I ate cake and now my grandma died." That's such a
Yeah.
normal, I mean, such a quick I used to experience that when I was really anxious that, oh, this is probably because of this one thing. And it's just that I've caused this. It's those really immediate, I guess we would call them peril predictions or anything like that. If I do this, then this horrible thing will happen, or always being on edge to make sure that you stay safe. But now look what I did. I ate the cake and my grandma died.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I was blaming myself, but
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you handle it once you finally got free? I'm sure there had to be some readjustment coming back into normal life or outside of the cult life. Like, how did you manage that?
well, the way I left was not the way I wanted because shortly after that event with my
Okay.
grandma, I told them, look, I've done my best. Actually, in the Catholic diocese in Wilmington, Delaware, where I think President Joe Biden is a part of,
Yeah. Mhm.
that bishop actually removed our group. So our group was not recognized there. And so as this is happening, I'm starting to kind of open my eyes. And I got sent back to the Philippines. So we get kicked out of Delaware. I get sent back to the Philippines. But before I get my plane ticket, I told the superiors, look, I've done my best. I tried my best to be obedient. I've tried my best to be humble. I remained silent. I've taken all of the crap that's happened to me and I've taken it on the chin. Now I'm ready to leave. And I want to leave in a
Mhm.
peaceful, cordial, good terms.
Mhm.
And the response was, well, you're still under your vows. So like we take like vows kind of, and
Okay.
it's not like a wedding vow. It's not permanent because they give you it's called temporary. So I took my temporary vows for let's say 3 years. At the end of 3 years, you retake your vows,
Okay.
and after like 9 years, then you take what's called a perpetual vow, where it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I vow for this. So when I approached and said, I'm ready to leave, the response was, well, you're still not finished with your 3 years. You still got time. So here's your plane ticket. Go to the Philippines. And then after you finish your year, see what happens. So I go back to the Philippines and I'm just being ignored. There were like whippings. Uh, it was just I couldn't take the gaslighting anymore. I couldn't take I'm being punished. I'm being whipped for stupid things, things that other people can do, like eating at a McDonald's. Like if I'm eating at a McDonald's with my money, because my
Mm.
parents would send money, and
Mhm.
I would use some of that just to buy myself like an apple pie, just an apple pie
Mhm.
and a cup of coffee. And other people saw me, reported me. It's like I'm in North Korea. And
Right.
next thing I know, I'm getting in front of everybody. They assign people. All right, you whip him, whip Ryan this amount of times. And so it was like I had it because yes, I'm in there, but my heart wanted to explore married life. My heart wanted to explore getting an education, wanted to read books. I felt like the old Ryan, the real me, wanted to emerge, but all I was getting was punishment. So
Yeah.
after that, I said, you know what, the hell with this. So I would sneak out, kind of uh, try to dress normal because we did have our religious habit kind of thing,
Okay.
our clerical. So I would remove my clerical because I'm like, this isn't me. I mean, I'm being but I didn't know that I was being. It was just so mind bending. But I would go
Yeah.
out, I would meet with people. I was like starting to refine myself, but I was hiding. And then I would start dating. I started dating
Okay.
somebody, but then I'd go back and I'd be, hey, I talked to like another priest who wasn't really with the community, but like, hey, I've done this. Okay, I get it wasn't a humiliating experience, but it led to me losing my V card.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never like done anything. I mean, come on. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and wow.
You're like, I'm not
Uh,
going back to that cult ever
uh,
again now.
no, no. I
That's
mean,
way better than anything we're doing in that cult.
no. The experience was the worst. Actually, I
Oh
was opposite.
no.
I
You're
felt
kidding.
because for so long I had this desire to, if I'm gonna lose it, I wanted to be like in matrimony, someone who I
Yeah.
really care for. I wanted to court somebody,
Hmm.
take them out, get to know them, and maybe I guess like kind of the conservative style. That's what I
Hmm.
wanted. But it's like I'm not getting anywhere. I'm asking to leave this place and I'm not being allowed to leave. I'm trying to kind of break the rules by sneaking out and just kind of meeting people. So I was like, you know what, the hell with it. I'm kind of dating this girl on the side. Um, One thing led to another, and I lost my V card, but I felt so much shame because like for so long I had been having this idea that sex is bad, that marriage is, or the way that this group would portray marriage is uh as secondary. It's not holy enough. You're not good enough. So it's like I lost my V card, but internally I felt shame that I was like the way they would say it is, imagine you're an angel on your throne or on your place in
Okay.
heaven, and like Lucifer, you've lost your place. You've been cast out of heaven. You lose your position.
Okay.
So I felt like being in the cult, being in the group, I felt like I had a place in heaven. That it's all secured, but by me going down to uh, my carnal passions,
Right.
I've lost that place. So I felt like this is it. I'm done. And so when I left, there was so much guilt and shame, but I've allowed myself to kind of change the narrative. Like, okay, like, talking to
Yeah.
myself and also getting counseling, therapy. Is like, why did those things happen? I was in a place of extreme pressure, of
Hmm.
extreme manipulation.
Hmm.
And so it was a painful experience, but
Yeah.
I've also found the power to reclaim my narrative.
Good.
And that's why I'm here.
Good. And I'm sorry, I was not trying to make light of your situation. I feel
Oh
badly that I
no.
said that. That was
Oh,
not okay
I'm,
of me.
it gets better later. I mean, after that
All right.
experience.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it gets better later because I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Um, no, but so all of this happens and you feel like you've basically been kicked out of heaven. It sounds like, okay, well now, no, I've really done it. And so tell me, I want to hear the part where it gets better.
I mean,
Well,
the
I don't have to hear all of it, but I want to know like how you felt after you left. Like after like once you were out, what was it like to say, okay, I'm out, I've done it, I've made this decision. It was a process, it took a long time. And what like when you finally got to a point, I don't know if there was a define it doesn't sound like there were a lot of defining moments in this process. It was kind of like a slow sink and maybe a slow rise. Like it sounds like it was very much a process and there was not a like, and then I was in and then this happened and then this happened. It was just a very mixed up process. So as you leave, like at what point after you had officially left, did you did you have a rationalization where you were like, okay, now I'm out, I can do what I want? Or, oh my gosh, I was in a cult? Like, what was that like for you?
so I didn't want to leave them. That's the thing. Like, I wanted to leave, but I still wanted to. That's why, like a few years prior, I
Okay.
still wanted to have relations where like there's a communication going on.
Yeah.
But I had sex with some
Hmm.
girl that I was dating. a
Mm-hmm.
great person. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, uh, I knew that there was no turning back.
Mm-hmm.
So when I told my superior, like, well, first I told him, look, I've had it. I'm ready to go. I'm done. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
need to tell him that I've had relationships with anybody. That's none of his business.
Right.
But he was like, no, I don't want you to go. He goes, look, I want to
Oh.
go. But then he goes, but next month I can use you on mission. We can go to kind of like what they were trying to do with my brother.
Mm-hmm.
But with me, it was too late. It's like, man, I've been here for 11 years and I've been stuck.
Yeah.
It's like now you want me to go on mission to Italy or anywhere? Or like, what is this? He's like, well, I mean, we need you. We need your Spanish speaking skills. And he's like, are you sure you don't want to go? I'm like, I'm sure. He's like, why? Because this isn't me. Me standing up for myself, kind of being a little bit more firm, isn't me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of the passive pushover guy because
Mm-hmm.
I allowed myself to be. So he's like, why? He's like, look, I had a girlfriend. I slept with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay, yeah, we can't have you here. You need to go home. So it was like just like that,
Oh, that fast.
it was quick.
Okay.
But I told him no, because he wanted me to have my parents pay for everything and we'll get your ticket, get out of here. I said, no, wait a minute. I've been here for several years. I've only seen the walls of this place. I've only now am I starting to see outside. I'm in the Philippines. I don't know when my next time coming here is gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
I go home right now. I'm gonna tell everybody all I saw was a freaking prison wall.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're gonna do is my parents they send me money. I'll give you a small percentage of that money. You allow me to stay, and I'm gonna go around do my thing. I'm gonna look for a job, and I'm gonna see what I do with my life.
Yeah. Good for you.
So I did stay. I
Yeah.
mean, I have a place, but it was okay. It's like it was like a treaty kind of thing. It's like I'm
Okay.
allowed to stay. I'm allowed to go out, meet people, but I have a place to stay. If I wanted to pray, there's a chapel. They don't gotta tell me anything. But uh, so kind of refining myself was hard. I'm dating people. I mean, I mean, think I was 17 when I joined, 16, 17, no experience. And then I'm 28 when I like officially got out. I officially got out, but I'm still there. But
Mm-hmm.
like I'm it's like I'm in the world, baby. It's like I haven't tried a cigarette. I haven't tried a glass of wine. I haven't tried a beer. I haven't driven a car. So all these things, I felt like a puppy again,
Yeah.
but still trying to ignore my anxiety. But it was still there. I think shortly after, maybe 6 months later, is when I went to Australia. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that my time with my brother, comparing our experiences, and the cool thing was that he didn't shut me down.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem with cults. Even with maybe some ex-members. I'm not sure for all cults, but at least in my experience, you can't talk about the experiences. All you can highlight are, oh, the good times. Oh, those are good times. And if
Mm-hmm.
someone says anything about the bad times, the rest of the members, even though they're ex-members, they'll shut you down. Oh, don't talk about that. But I think talking to my brother and hearing that he supported me and he's like, I'm sorry that you went through that. That wasn't my experience. But he's like, yeah, there definitely needs to be a change. It felt healing to have somebody
Good.
instead of saying, shut up, Ryan, just listen. I think that changed the course of my life.
Mm-hmm. Do you still experience anxiety about it? Is it something there, like in your day to day, is there still some anxiousness there?
I did initially because to break out, I had to find a way to express myself because
Mm-hmm.
in when you talking to because these were my friends for so long, like the
Right.
community and the supporters, and I lost everybody from LA. I mean, high school people, like they don't know who the hell I am now.
Right.
So, like when I would talk to them, it was like silence. It was like, no, like you need to shut up about it. So I had to put out a blog, and in the blog was my way of getting my voice out because I didn't have the peace of mind to speak in front of a camera on a microphone. I needed the blog, and I just let it go.
Mhm.
I just pressed send and I shared it on Facebook, and then I'd have all these people who were connecting, and another group of people saying you're evil or you're an agent of Satan, or if you were whipped, it was because God was punishing you. And it's like,
Ooh.
so yes, there was anxiety, but then I also learned to just brush it off. It's like, this is my story, this is my narrative, and
Yeah.
it took time, but I think the best part was for me to say, this is my narrative. You have your own narrative. You want to believe lies? Go ahead. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I know what my narrative is. I'm grounded, and now I have peace.
Yeah. I think I remember when I talked with you a couple of weeks ago that I thought for a long time, I mean, you see what, like a Netflix documentary or something like that on some cult that's like, whether it's Jonestown or, some big cult like that. And you think, wow, those like when those happen, that's a really big deal. Like I can't understand how people fall into that or things like that. And I mean, and my daughter is like she's mesmerized by these documentaries. And I was like, no, apparently this is really common because I remember you saying, no, it's not. There are a lot of people out there who have been in a cult. I had no idea.
I had no idea either. It
Yeah,
took time.
I'm like, no. Wow. Okay. So what if you were to give advice to somebody, whether I'm assuming if when you were in there, did they allow you to have outside news or outside information, or was it just what they fed? Like you can read this, you can look at this. I mean, you said North Korea. And I know they're very this is what you're allowed to read. So were you allowed to watch the news? Were you allowed to do any of that?
No, no TV. Like, if ever, like the founder of the group, like we would love it when he would come because he's very charismatic speaking. But he would also bring the projector and show stuff. He would show clips,
Mm.
and this is our only time to watch the news. But he would
Hmm.
have like edited clips of like, I think, because I didn't know what the hell YouTube was. I didn't know what
Hmm.
podcasts were, but he would show us a bunch of like, what is that? True Wars or something like that. There's some with Alex Jones.
Oh, yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. What was it? Alex Jones. He was a piece of work. I know what you're talking about though.
you
Yeah,
know,
I would have to look up the name of it, but yeah, Alex Jones.
yeah.
Mhm.
So he would show like clips of I don't know who this guy is, but I was like, wow, like,
Wow.
so oh, this is happening. So there's all this like paranoia happening in our minds. So
Oh
the
my gosh.
only and that would add on to the end times. The end times is coming. No, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing all this extreme fasting. Um, but actually, a funny story about because we would have extreme fasting for like 40 days, sometimes 60 days. All we would eat was like bread and water, or maybe like tasteless soup, like just like water with a bit of rice, or this is very plain, very low calorie diet for sometimes 40 days, sometimes 60 days. It would depend because the idea was the world is ending. Look at the news. Look at this. At the time it was H1N1 virus. I don't
Yeah,
know if you remember this one. So
I
they
do.
they
Yeah.
they they showed us a clip from YouTube of some girl saying that, oh, that she saw a warehouse of the U.S. Army where they're gonna have coffins for all of the. I mean, there was always conspiracy theories that they're gonna put all like the people who like this. I don't know, but there was just so much
Yeah.
fear into us, and I ate it all up. But I think what made us so easy to brainwash was our sleep was, or at least my sleep schedule was from 10 p.m. to 12:45 a.m. Very low calorie meals, so very few meals,
Yeah.
very malnourished. And there was a point after my grandma died where I started to disobey. And talking about books and media that we're not allowed to watch, I found somewhere on the compound the the book Oliver Twist. I don't know. Have you ever read the book Oliver Twist, or are you familiar with
I
any
am
of?
familiar with it, but I have not read it.
Oh boy. Okay, so there is a. I've never read the book. I had never seen the movies, but it's about this little boy, orphan boy, Oliver Twist. He's like in an orphanage, but there's a part there in the book where it's talking about um the boys getting second, because there's also like the picture of Oliver asking for more gruel. He's asking for more
Right.
food,
More,
and he's
please. Yeah.
yes, and he's getting punished. But there in the book, and it was like this was like I had to put the book down because it's talking about like no, you shouldn't give them more because if you give them more food, then these young boys are gonna get strong, and if they're strong, they're not gonna be. It's not easy to control them, and so it was like, whoa,
Ooh.
is that happening here? And then, but that goes back to, oh, like the rule is you're not allowed to read those books because then that's where the devil gets inside of you. So I had to put the book down, but I finished reading the book in secrecy. But it kind of, I mean, that is my point of view of the book. I know maybe nobody else is gonna have that point of view, but it really hit a spot in my heart where it's like, oh boy, I think that helped open my eyes.
I don't know what your religious beliefs are now or what your political beliefs are now, but I have so many things going on in my head. I just want to tell you that sometimes I think that God puts the exact right book in your hand at the exact right time. I mean, I mean, whatever that was, I'm so glad that you read Oliver Twist.
It's funny. I mean,
However, that ended up in that compound in your hands, that needed to be there. And I think it's just the fact that you mentioned so many things that just feel so relevant right now in maybe where we are in our country, in the world, or whatever else. I do feel like that we're fed so much misinformation or disinformation or things to keep us scared and afraid. And because fear is such a motivator, and it sounds like that was the thing, like the manipulation tool or the thing that made you feel safe was the thing that was scaring you the most. And if there's anything I know about people who are anxious, it's that sometimes those fears feel safe. If I worry about it, and if I make sure I do all the things that my anxiety is telling me that I should do or should not do, at least I'll be safe. I might be terrified, I might be miserable, it might not feel good, but I'm not like nothing bad will happen to me or to my family, or nothing bad will, if I can just keep checking and keep doing these things, even though something doesn't feel right, it's going to be okay. And that is such a fear based response and such an anxiety, like making that anxiety grow. And I'm just so impressed with what you're doing and the message that you're sharing with people because it's important. It's important even for people who are not ever going to wind up in a cult. I think people need to hear this. It's so important.
and I have no idea how that book got in my hands, but it's like
Yeah.
small things that I'm afraid. I was afraid of. I was afraid of the book, Oliver
Yeah.
Twist.
Yes.
Am I gonna go to hell because of reading it? But then, like, a part of me
Right.
was like, "Oh, come on, this is Charles Dickens. Just
Right.
read it in the bathroom or read it
Yeah.
like." And
Yeah.
it helped.
Yeah. And I just feel like those things fall into our lives exactly when they're supposed to. And I think that maybe like your angel might have just dropped that in there for you because I hope someone else found it too and got the same message. Wow. Your story is incredible. And so now you've been out for a while. What are you doing with your life? Do you have like the OG Ryan's back and I mean, you seem like you feel great and you've got such a personality and you're sharing your story. So, do you feel like you're getting back to that sophomore in high school kid that wanted to do fun things and really like had all of this energy?
Well, I do have a lot of FOMO, that fear of
Right.
not fear of missing out, but more like I missed out. So
Yeah.
a lot of me wants to kind of catch up, but I'm in the place where it's like I'm a 37-year-old man now. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not a kid. I have to be wise,
Right.
but I have to be me too. So I started the blogs as a way to kind of get it out there, and then it shifted to the podcast. Now my podcast has had a lot of, I guess, facelifts,
Mm,
but it takes work. I
does. It
mean,
does.
it is. I mean, I had a lot of anxiety starting it. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of, and it was all over the place. And sometimes it still is.
Mhm.
But even though I had that anxiety, I still had a higher purpose. And I think having a higher purpose was a, a motivator for me to kind of put my anxiety not aside, but to go through it and leave it behind, and move forward. And now I can talk to people like the old Ryan did. Before I was terrified. I'd be here on a camera. I'd be literally I would be shaking.
Yeah.
Now it's like there's a peace that comes when I face my fear, and my fear was my own truth. Now that I've embraced my truth, my
Mhm.
narrative, and it's not out of hate. I feel that I share my narrative out of a place of genuine care for people. I don't want people to
Mhm.
experience what I did.
Mhm.
But now that I've experienced embracing my narrative, embracing my truth, I want my platform to be where other people, it doesn't have to be a cult, can be from any background, as long
Mhm.
as their message is, peaceful, not hateful. But I want
Yeah.
this platform to be a place where people can share their truth and people can connect. I think that makes the world a better place when there's more connection, building more bridges.
Yeah. I agree. And I love that you have this very hopeful and like just such an insightful, I don't want to say spin, but like a very hopeful ending to a very long and it sounds like really tumultuous story with lots of experience that I can't even wrap my brain around. Like it's so interesting to me. So for people who want to connect with you, who want to hear more and really like get to know more, where do they find you?
Well, I have a podcast. It's called
Mhm.
the Truth That Heals Podcast. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, also YouTube, and on Instagram, Truth That Heals Pod. But I've also started a second channel. I'm
Mm.
still new, but it's called Creativity Worth Expressing. This is a place where I want to kind of step away from the trauma stuff
Yeah.
and invite uh, independent artists, musicians, anything, people who are creative. I want to share their work because I think that expressing oneself in a creative way, in a healthy way, is not only beautiful, but I think it's healing. So I think that, uh, so that's also the channel that I have, Creativity Worth Expressing. You can find me on Instagram and on YouTube.
That is beautiful. You are doing incredible work and it sounds like healing work. And that makes me so happy for you. And
Thank you.
if you send me those links, I will be sure to put those in the show notes so people can connect with you, songwriters, artists. I feel like there's a lot of creatives that really use that creativity to help them deal with anxiety, and they're lucky to be able to get to know you. So thank you so much for talking with me and for sharing your story.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I loved it.